and welcome to episode 28 of the Web Visions podcast. My name is Shlomo. This is my co-host Vic. How are you, Vic?
Hello, welcome to 28th episode of Web Visions.
We got an exciting one today. A good old friend of mine, Gregarious Narain's new business. He's the chief product officer of Snickerdoodle, snickerdoodle.com. They are an ad unit that you could use right now in Farcaster. What makes this interesting for this podcast is because you hear us talk all the time about my love of things like Farcaster and Vic's opposite love of Farcaster, because he's basically show me the audience, show me the money. And I'm like, no, this audience is small but ravenous. And we have a really good discussion about how Snickerdoodle has decided to really kind of get into this particular market to test it out. I think Vic, I think you were pretty surprised, weren't you?
Yes, it was pretty interesting how Farcaster allows to exploit their user base for very old, but at the same time, new kind of interactions and engagement. And Snickerdoodle did a really great job to increase the attention and traction on the Farcaster channels. And I think those two projects are going to benefit tremendously by this mechanic.
See, isn't that crazy? Vic was not talking like this 2 weeks ago. I love that things move fast around here in Web Visions, and we're just open to people to change our concepts of what's going on in the space. Let's jump in with Gregarious Narain of Snickerdoodle. Awesome. We're excited to have on the podcast a good old buddy of mine, Gregarious Narain. He is now the CPO of Snickerdoodle, which the reason why we're really calling you is because your CEO, I forget his name, keeps putting up these posts on LinkedIn about some incredible retention and just audience building you're doing with your new product. As he was putting it, you're dog fooding it, which, let's be honest, all companies should dog food their product, so I'm glad you're right. That's kind of a normal thing. But let's first go through what exactly Snickerdoodle does, right? And then what you did with your dog fooding to really kind of show new retention. Okay?
Yeah, sure. So, well, thank you for having me. Appreciate being here. So we're building what we refer to as a consumer attention network. And, I think at heart, what we've come to realize is that if you step back for a minute, in the traditional world, we sort of like our Web 2 versions of ourselves were highly centralized, right? So when brands and marketers and startups and everybody wanted to sort of get our attention, they had to go to very few places to do that, right? And in today's world, attention is obviously a very sort of ephemeral thing to begin with, but it's also now spread across and very decentralized into millions of little places, right? So you've got the long tail of creators, you've got, which includes newsletters and podcasts and whatnot. You've got telegrams and discords. You've got SoFi platforms like Farcaster. And so historically, brands have ignored those channels because they're like, I don't want to do the work to like go find where all those little people are and then figure out how to talk to them and all this other stuff. And so they'd rather overpay in the large platforms to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, at the same time that this sort of trend line has been happening where like our attention is being, diminishing and decentralized, we've also sort of seen this other movement where our data has become invaluable to the success of businesses as they evolve. However, us individuals have never participated in the value being created by our data. And so now we sort of have been given this like sort of weird choice of like, either you give me everything or you get nothing, right? And we think that dynamic doesn't make sense either. And so what Snickerdoodle is doing is, we're named after the cookie. Mm-hmm. And the way to think about it is that Google, Facebook, et cetera, they made their businesses by leveraging cookies to basically harness your attention, right? And what Snickerdoodle is doing is reinventing the model around the cookie, where it's a shared cookie now, and you own that cookie instead of them owning it, right? And so at heart, our system is designed to let consumers participate in how their attention gets used. Easy analogy is if you think about, you remember the BAT token in Brave browser,
Yes.
right? We're like that, but without the browser, right? And also
Interesting.
without
Okay.
a special token. You earn like real tokens in our ecosystem, not like just some weird token that, you know, you have to then go figure out how to trade. So that's the in a nutshell, what we're doing is building like a new type of, we call them an attention network, because you're not always being advertised to. Sometimes you're being invited to engage and sort of leverage your attention. But we think that that attention is valuable. And we think that people should share, you know, the publishers, the networks, and the advertisers ultimately all share in that equation.
Right. So that's really top level for me, and I kind of get it. Can you give us just like a straight example, like someone who's using it on your network or
Yeah,
even the
absolutely.
work you guys were doing?
Right. So if you go to our website, if you want to bring that up real quick, I'll show you.
Absolutely.
We just launched a new program. It's called Share to Earn. And what Share to Earn represents is basically the first manifestation of one of these attention networks. And so what you'll see here is this is a Farcast centric ad model, right? So in Share to Earn today, our ad type is actually a frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you can run anyone in our network can be a publisher and a consumer at the same time. So if you've got a channel or if you're a user, right, with just a big following, you can take a link from our system, one of our frame URLs, drop it into a post, and it will then render an ad inside of that post, right? Now, what happens if you scroll up a little bit, you'll see one of our ads there. This is like one of our long running ads, but yeah, if you scroll down a little bit.
So is this dynamic? Like I could
Yes,
just
the
go
ads
in
are all
and-
dynamic. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is actually what you see here. And we're just testing this now, but this is our order book for the actual ad network. It's visible to the world. Like anyone can see which ads are set to run. And as you can see in this, like this little visualization here, this card, there's $5 DGen claimable by the person viewing the ad. And then the person who shares that ad is also going to earn 5 DGen. So in total, the advertiser is saying like, I'm willing to pay 10 DGen, right, to acquire your attention, right? And then that gets split between the person who shared it, who has built up an attention network of their own, right? And the person who's consuming it, who's giving their attention to this thing.
Can we click this thing? Is this
Yeah, so if you
gonna...
click cast on there, it'll open Warpcast if you have it. And today these only run in the Farcaster ecosystem.
Right. We're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, sure. Vic, probably open in a new window, Vic. So.
Well, Vic is not as bullish on Farcaster as I am until like 3 weeks ago, where I sent them the article that their evaluation was a unicorn, and then he goes, "Okay, Shlomo, what the hell?"
Yep.
But he's still, and part of why I wanted you on here is to talk about you guys' work on Farcaster and the level of meaningfulness. Vic is having, as a CTO, he's been in the blockchain world for like a decade. He's total blockchain, where I think you and I are more on the consumer/marketing intention side of the situation. So sometimes those two worlds clash, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
So,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, just to close the loop on the ad, though,
please.
This is really the first time where you're actively getting paid for that engagement, and it's paid in crypto, right?
Right.
Now, to Vic, one of the reasons we chose Farcaster, just to articulate that, when we've been building this protocol for the last 2 years, right, to sort of manage the on-chain AdWords, if you will, right, like with a visible order book and like staking to sort of move and manipulate your ranking, et cetera, right? But when we were looking for a way to test and deploy this, right, like there were a lot of options. We could go to like Web2 users, right? But then we literally have to deal with like giving them wallets and all this other stuff, right? And they may not even value or appreciate sort of like what the token might be, right? You could go to Web 2.5 consumers, right? Like where they're maybe kind of touching. But what Farcaster represented was, a couple of things at the same time, right? One, it represented a highly coveted and targeted user base, right? So there's about 600 something thousand crypto enthusiasts that are in that Farcaster product. But here's the thing, all of them paid to be there. You have to pay like $5 to make your account. So, you're not there like just screwing around to reserve your name. I mean, there's probably some of that, but there's actually like a very vibrant community of people, which makes them, I think, a coveted cohort for advertisers to want to reach, right? Now, the other better and the more interesting part really to me as a technologist is they also all are Web3 native by default. So every user there has a custody wallet. Like when you set your Farcaster account up, you actually get a wallet associated with it. And then you can also link additional wallets to that, right? So then you can sort of choose and receive your rewards there. Now, what that provided was this very unique opportunity where when you share into this world, they came out with a spec called frames, if you haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, frames are, you remember the old OG tags for Facebook, right? Like the open graph tags that allow for previews and links and whatnot, right? What Farcaster did is they sort of hijacked that spec and said, we're going to throw some other tags into that namespace, right? And what those allow is for you to describe behavior that you want to do. And so I think like the original intention of frames was really to bring interactivity from the outside world into the Farcaster ecosystem, right? Now, here's the power of what a frame does. It is not an iframe, right? It is actually what they do is they read the OG tags and they extract the intention off and then create a signed, cryptographically signed environment where the signature of both the person who's sharing and the person who's looking are available. So that means you have two wallet addresses essentially, or two users represented in a way that cannot be hacked, right? And you then provide a model for them to interact. Now, frames are very simplistic right now. So it basically has like an image, that's the header part. And then it can render a number up to like 4 intents, as they call them, AKA 4 buttons at the bottom. And those buttons can do a few specific things. Yeah, super straightforward, right? Yeah. But what it allows is you can then say like gather user input that way and associated with a wallet. You can initiate a transaction. You can send people off to a web page, right? But you know who that user is and you know them from a Web3 point of view as well, which is part of what made our frame-based ads so powerful, is that now we can guide you through a number of activities, right? And so I'll describe the makeup of our frame-based ads in a second. But basically, when you do that, because you shared it, Shlomo's link, I know it's in a post from Shlomo. So I just look at the owner of that link, and now I can pay Shlomo something, and I can pay the viewer, his audience, basically, for engaging with it as well.
Okay. So do you have the full address or just some intermediary thing which you need to interact with Farcaster to reach your audience?
Yeah, the signature itself contains the address. Yeah.
Okay. So you have the full address and you can accrue the reward for this user in your own tokens, essentially, correct?
Yeah. So what's great about our frames is we support any ERC20. So our brands, our advertisers, our sponsors in the ecosystem, what they do is when they set their account up with us, we provide escrow wallets to them automatically. They load those wallets with whatever token they want to distribute to their specific audience, right? They set a bounty, basically a CPA on the ad itself. So they say like, for full completion of this ad, I'm willing to pay X amount. And then they can also articulate the split. So they say like, I'll pay 50% to the publisher, 50% to the viewer. That's our default split, but it's totally overridable. And as I mentioned, the whole order book is public. So this provides room for experimentation where you might say, I'm going to offer a lot to the publisher, right? And I'm going to give nothing to the viewer, right? Which may drive like a lot more uptake from the publisher side. But if you want to do more community building activity, you might split it, right? And so you could divide that equity in any way you want, right? And so we provide that facility in the admin where you create your ad. The order book is visible there, so you can see every ad that's running. You can also help gauge then like, oh, if I want to get to the top, this is like where people are bidding, right? Our ads have been running purely on Degen so far because it's the kind of the, native token or native currency of the community.
Degen or I guess Warps, which isn't really a coin. Degen is basically the coin, right?
That's right. Yeah. Degen is the community token, basically. Yeah. That was created kind of for tipping.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing ads running on Degen at about, usually the bounty's been 10 Degen, which is about 10 cents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 5 cents being paid to the publisher and 5 cents being paid to the viewer. Now here's, just think about that. We were just talking about this today on our space. For 10 cents, you are acquiring a crypto user, right?
That's insane to me.
Shlomo,
Right.
think about that, right? Like,
Yeah.
forget that, like, forget targeting yet. There's no targeting, right?
Right.
Like, but you're literally paying 5 cents to that user to acquire them, right?
Right.
Now, the structure of our ads, there's several components. There's like 3 stages to it. There's the content stage. So that's where you would then provide like an image with like a call to action. We
Mhm.
just launched today a new slideshow ad, which basically allows you to put 3 images in. So think of it like Product Hunt running in an ad, right?
Mhm.
And so because we are an action oriented platform, right? Like not just the view, the brand's already getting more than they ever would have gotten, right? Now they only support images in Farcaster today. So you can't do video ads, you can't do other things like that. So you have to get kind of creative, right?
Does it do
The
animated
second,
GIFs? No.
huh? You could do
Does it do?
animated GIFs, but
Okay.
we actually, the way the frames work is they're dynamically generating images for the image part, right? So
Right.
you're actually like generating a static image from like the dynamic content that the advertiser wants, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first part is the content part. Today we have slideshow ads. Within probably a couple of weeks from now, hopefully, if all goes well, we will also have our survey-based ads. And so you can actually conduct market research inside of that ad unit directly. So you can literally poll people for 3 to 5 questions. But remember, those 3 to 5 questions don't come naked. They come with the user who answered it. So now you have the backfill
Exactly.
of all the wallet data and transaction data that you can also associate and attach to that. And by the way, the other data set that's naturally attached to every engagement is the Farcaster data, which means the
Right.
channels they follow, their bio, et cetera. So there's a lot of data available about that user and that interaction automatically, right? And then of course, there's the engagement with your content. Now that's the
Right. Well,
first phase. Yeah.
and also, I just want to remind that each one of these people is already in the blockchain ecosystem
Yes.
somewhere, whether
Yes.
they're degens with coins or art people with their JPEGs and everything in between.
That's right.
That's what makes so many people of the last 8-9 months are trying to make surveys in Web3. And I turn them all down because they all have these missing parts of reaching appropriately this demographic. Their things is literally, oh, we'll make a mobile app and they'll get coins. So it's like, no one is going to do that. You'll never get me off my Instagram stories feed on the toilet. You would have to literally change my life to do that, right? And so none of that, but this, where it's going straight into their backyard, Farcaster, where their mind is already in the space because they're looking in Farcast, I'm super bullish on that. I think that's super awesome.
Yeah. So it comes with the distribution, right? And it's it's almost like an affiliate network, right? Because like what's really happening is you're sharing this link, a link to this product, with the hope that you're going to earn from the completion of a transaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that transaction for us, the first phase, as I mentioned, is the content phase. So it's either the survey or the slideshow. The second phase is we basically built a questing platform in the product as well. And so at that second phase, you can then ask for them to do certain behaviors. And so this is probably what you saw Jonathan, JP talking about. So we can have them follow a thing, like a thing, recast a thing, click a link, right? So there's a small set of actions that we can enforce today. And you can basically require those actions be completed as well in the process of claiming. And then the third part is just basically the ending where you actually you're paid out, right? Your reward. And then we actually can then automatically give you the option to participate in more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that person, that publisher who shared that link, if you do 5 of these engagements in a row, they're getting paid on 5 things.
Right. Love it. Love it.
It sounds really fantastic, especially the part regarding the surveys, because it's, I don't know, the audience on Farcaster is very engaged into crypto and Web3 things. And for product people to get the customer discovery or something, it's the best way to do, because previously I don't know. You have to go to the Telegram groups, to the X
Right.
threads, wherever. Right
Yep.
now, this is very fantastic,
And you had to
um,
spam, by the way, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
unless you were like a member of that community, right? Like, you were just going to kind of show up and be like, "Hey, does anyone want to take my survey?" Right?
you've
And
been
then
banned.
yeah, and if you wanted to like do a reward for it, you'd have to usually go set something up and like, wire a contract up or use like a third party tool, etc. Right? And so yeah, we take a ton of friction out of the process, but also give you the distribution. But we do it in a way that's above board and fair to all the parties, right? So that user who's giving you their time and attention, they're getting paid for that, right?
Right.
And
Love it.
that's what we think is the critical
So how
unlock.
many what sort of businesses are using you guys? Because we are thinking, we're on episode 28, right? So now it's time for us to really play around with We've purposely not been on Farcaster yet because I don't have a solid strategy for utilizing that time for us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I like your ad unit, and maybe this would be a good start for us to play around with
Yeah.
Farcaster to just kind of jumpstart a channel over there. Um, have you had other podcasters doing that? What sort of companies are doing this?
Yeah, good. It's a good question. So far we work with a lot of Web3 projects today. Our goal is to actually bring the Web2 into this ecosystem, right? So we're doing a lot of work, and our business model fundamentally, I think, is around like the SaaS side, which will actually abstract away the crypto parts for traditional brands to just buy like they buy Google AdWords, right? But behind the scenes, what's really happening is that user is dynamically getting like rewards that'll be intriguing to them. But relative to some of the use cases or who's using it, right? We've done about maybe a 10 or 12 campaigns in the last week and a half or so. We've got about 50 people in the queue already waiting to do them. We're trying to like make sure we're being very, cautious and slow, like as we do it. But I think it's been a couple of things that have happened so far. A lot of them are what you just mentioned, Shlomo, which is like that bootstrap phase. And we think it's a very good use case. And you and I have been in marketing for a long time. It is hard to actually, to your point, it is hard to rationalize. I'm going to spend a bunch of my time, energy, money to go work on this channel with like 50 users on it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Okay.
what we've found is a lot of established projects are like, look, we hear Farcaster's kind of a thing. We don't really know how to start or where to start. Right. But we also need to like have some presence there before like we can even justify like going there.
Right.
And so a lot of our early customers have been like, great, I want to make the case to my marketing team or to my CEO that we should spend some marketing time and dollars creating net new content for this channel that's unique to there. How am I going to do that? I got to have a couple thousand people like that I'm already following me. Right.
Right.
And so here's the interesting challenge. It's really hard to grow organically on Farcaster. Very, very hard. Like I will tell you, like we've been in there, we've been watching even when you look at, it's still a new thing. And there's a lot of dynamics in the ecosystem that, I think
I have the slowest, not slowest, just the most non-existent engagement over on Farcaster.
Very difficult.
And I was an early person, and then I paused on it, and then I went back when people were starting to get into it. It's like nothing happens.
Yeah.
I have nothing to really say that connects with anybody. I even actually wrote that on Twitter earlier today. I'm sorry, X earlier today.
Yeah.
But it's like, I know there's like a cabal of like the Brooklyn cabal, like all talks to each other and shares their crap on the Farcaster. Brooklyn cabal is really what's going on over there.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to break into the other 99% of the people there that is valuable, that are just like us, right? Worthy, smart folks, but just have zero traction over there.
Yeah. It's really challenging, right? And I don't know, Shlomo, we were there when Twitter started. It wasn't hard when it was on Twitter. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like that was.
It's not even hard right now on Twitter.
Right. Yeah. So, there's some things, and here's the thing. I think it's, to the point that it's an early platform. They're trying new things to figure out how to not become a cesspool. I value and I appreciate that.
Totally.
But it makes it very difficult, like as a marketer, trying to rationalize. So I think like we found a good unlock to help a lot of people be able to rationalize getting into the Farcaster ecosystem. Right. Because they can get some attention on the parts that they want, and more people get to consider whether or not they want to connect with you and become part of it. And now you can justify that. right?
Yeah.
Another use case that has come up is, yes, specific content, like, kind of like amplification, right? So that could be like, oh, here's the show notes for our latest podcast. Like we just did one last week for an event, right? Like just to drive RSVPs for the event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's another great rational use case or logical use case for the platform. The one that we're working towards, which will be kind of coming, we just haven't found someone yet who's doing it. But if you think about like net new tokens, meme coins and whatnot, if you're trying to increase the share of wallets that hold your token, right? If you're trying to increase the volume of transactions in your token, this is a great way to seed the market with a new token, right? To start to drive and move some behavior, right? And so I think like where like a sub bucket of that will be like folks doing some kind of TGE or something else where sort of like, the vanity metrics, unfortunately, of like, hey, how many followers do you have here or there, whatnot matter, right? As well as how many people are holding your token matter, right? Like this becomes a kind, fairly efficient way to connect with other crypto people to get this token in front of them.
Love it. We are running really long with you. I appreciate your time. I just want to ask one question that is because this is this week, and it definitely you guys, I assume, internally are talking about Solana's blinks.
Yep.
Talk to me. Does that excite you?
It does. I mean, I think the thing that I'm most marveling at is how such old school low tech stuff is like ruling the day, right? So frames is OG meta tags. Blinks are basically a JSON file in the header, right? Yep. Like, it's all like going very traditional HTTP routes, right? Not, sort of like on chain, et cetera. And it's old school Chrome extensions, just like page rewrites and stuff like that.
I love you so much. You're as so old into this world as I am. I was just talking to Vic the other day, how, when he was like, well, what do we want to build in our product lab next, and just kind of scope and think about it. It's like, listen, let's go back of the transition between Web 1 and 2. The excitement people have, if you really remember, is that you could post a forum. You built a thing that I can make a forum, like bring things back down to that level, which is exactly what
the original decentralized thing was the internet, right? And
exactly. And we really need to go back to that moment and see things that they were building then, because we're forgetting the handshake, right? We are acting like Web 2 allowed us not to have the handshake anymore and make these other kind of degenerate situations where honestly it's not helping us enough, right? Of getting people involved in terms of doing the appropriate thing of this ecosystem. But that's where my head's at. That's like this week's Shlomoism is like, just start thinking between that transition, like as if it was this transition, Yeah,
so I think it's very exciting. I think what it's, as everything new, when new things start, they're just like, screw everything old, right?
Right.
And I think we're maturing in a lot of ways where we're like that, we should stop acting like that's evil. And we should start looking at that as for what it is, which is a wonderful distribution path, right? If we figure out how to work it. And I think like what Solana did was brilliant. It's probably only viable because Solana, runs a little more centralized than other things do, right? Like Ethereum could kind of pull it off, but they'd have to go negotiate with like 900 wallet companies, right? Like a little different, right? So I do think that's where the potential is here, right? Now, and I know you wanted to ask, like, where is Farcaster going, right? It's a fair question. I have no idea, right? Like,
even though they got a bunch of money, but I'm a little worried of when you get all that money at the beginning, it's because all those folks, like, I don't know, anytime A16Z is in something, which is the BlackRock of this space to me, just saying it, I don't want their money. God bless them as individuals, but as a unit, I'm not in. And so it's in this stage of my career, I'm not in. But they're so into it, like making it a unicorn, because I think they're just spinning coins of all their little businesses together. Do you guys have A16Z money?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
We have BlackRock money. No.
Boom. Well, that's better than having Boeing money, I guess, because then everything's going to fall apart. Give us some links that people can find you out in the world.
Absolutely. So if you want to try us out, just head over to snickerdoodle.com. You can find one of our ad units right there on the homepage. Just feel free to cast it. You will earn money basically in a minute or two after that happens. If you are on Warpcast or Farcaster, you can find us at /Snickerdoodle for the company, at Snickerdoodle for the company account, and /share to earn, which is our channel where actually our ads syndicate to automatically. So you could pick them up.
Awesome. I love you very much. I appreciate our friendship through the years. Vic, sign us out. What should our find audience on YouTube and LinkedIn and Spotify? What should they do?
I think that first they need to take a look at a Snickerdoodle website and deep dive into the Farcaster, because it's very, very cool podcast today. So guys, if you like this episode, like and subscribe to our next episodes. They're going to be more fun there.
Awesome. Episode 28 of Web Visions. Thank you. See you all next week.
Thanks, everyone.